Really. Now, those directives are discussed and debated in the Parliament, and sometimes directives are thrown out. But effectively, the mandate is, you will, this is the Commissioners effectively saying to the Parliament, you will please debate these issues and then pass them.
Yeah, I spoke to the Liberal Democrats candidate who's running for an MEP. Her name's Linda Jackson, a lovely lady, and she was saying to me that with the Treaty of Lisbon, which is now transferred from the European Constitution, as I believe it, that it actually slimlines the functions, the kind of institutions of Europe. So they're more, so they run smoother, they're more democratically accountable, and so therefore creating more democracy and more accountability. I'm very much aware that the Conservatives are having a calling for a referendum on the Treaty of Lisbon. You know, what is your position and the position of the UK Independence Party?
Well, it's quite clear the Lisbon Treaty, or the Reform Treaty, whatever they want to package it up as, is indeed in effect a constitution. I know this is hotly disputed and is subject to a lot of debate. My view is quite simply this, that by signing up and the treaty being fully ratified, and it's very interesting to see how the pressure is now back on the Irish people to say finally yes, and that does worry me when the democracy that was clearly there last year saying no is being pressed in on. Please say yes, and we won't have anything other than a yes answer. Why? Because yes, the Lib Dem representative is quite right to say that one of the objectives of the Lisbon Treaty is to streamline and perhaps create a greater degree of democracy within the European Union. But it's actually, and I have to tell you this, a smokescreen for the reality. The reality is it brings us, this country, into much closer union politically and strategically than we are at the moment, if that's possible. You've heard of the vetoes. When the Nice Treaty was signed, and some of you may have heard of the Nice Treaty, some of you may have even begun to read bits of it. It's very complex, as many of the treaties have been. But in 2000, when the Nice Treaty was signed, this country said goodbye to 39 vetoes. Vetoes being areas of decisioning within Europe that we could say no to, and that would block decisions. Come the Lisbon Treaty, our right to veto will be largely extinguished. Not fully, but largely. And I have heard recently professional politicians saying, well, of course this country still will have in the future a degree of say in how it runs itself, and if it wants to block something in Europe, it can do on main areas like defence, taxation and so on. But that's actually not true. As time passes, the whole intention of the European Union project is to create really a federalised Europe. And some would feel that that's perfectly all right. I totally and utterly disagree with that.
So with UKIP's position, you're advocating a unilateral withdrawal from the European Union. Now, many have argued, wouldn't that cost so many British jobs? Wouldn't that be bad for British business? Wouldn't we just be then froze out of a whole trading partner? And then we've got all the EU legislation that we signed up, for example, that workers can work all across Europe, can come and work in Britain, and wouldn't that change the whole nature of Britain's economy? And as the world is moving closer and closer together, as we're called a global village now, that we would find ourselves at a huge economic disadvantage.
Absolutely not. It's a myth. The trade between us and Europe within the European Union is a net gain to the European countries and not us. We give trade to Europe far more than we receive back from them, putting it in simple terms. And I don't understand this notion that if we were to leave the European Union, we have to stop trading with the European countries. That's completely crazy. Once we've withdrawn from the European Union, purely as a political arrangement, that's all the European Union really is, we're free to trade throughout the world, and that does include Europe. In terms of work, you only have to see the newspapers on a daily basis, and I must say I have absolutely nothing against our European friends. I'm very pro-European. It may not sound it, but let's make this quite clear. UKIP is not anti-European. We are pro-European. We just want to remain a country in our own right. We want to be friends with Europe, and it's perfectly possible to trade with the European bloc, as I've said. But let's just look at the situation now in terms of work. Many people, it's becoming less at the moment because of the economic circumstances we're in, but many people, through the free borders that now exist in the European Union, are coming to this country and taking, dare I say it, British jobs. And newspapers on a daily basis are telling us this, and people are getting upset. It happened yesterday, and it continues. The thing that worries me is that I'm not against, for example, the Poles coming to this country and working with us, because they're wonderful people. What I think I'm against is them taking jobs that perhaps we should have. And more importantly, I'm very concerned about the economics. That is, that very often the wealth that these people accrue, their wages, if you like, is taken out of this country back to their country. And I just wonder how healthy that is for our country in the long term. So just to recap, I would say withdrawing from the European Union, it will have no effect whatsoever in terms of our trading potential in the world, far from it. And I'll tell you something else. We sold out very badly when Ted Heath persuaded us to become members of the common market, which I was fully in favour of, I have to say, because it makes sense to be together in trading terms. We sold out to our Commonwealth allies, our Commonwealth friends. I take your point that the Commonwealth has perhaps weakened and shrunk in terms of trading potential over the years, but I feel a huge sense of disquiet about how we historically turned our back on our friends in New Zealand, for example, and stopped trading with them. Why? Absolutely why? So I think it's an excitement to look forward to, that we can start to be who we want to be, which is a country. We are in a global village. You're absolutely right. And yet, actually, that proves the point. Why should we feel vulnerable in what is a global village anyway?
But the Conservative position, and you know, the party is very similar, has obviously Conservative beliefs. But with the Conservative position, they're not calling for a withdrawal from the European Union, but effectively what they're calling for is a creation of nation states and an economic union. Now, you know, wouldn't that be a better position for British business and for trading with our European partners? Because there could be a scenario whereby if UKIP were to have power, and who knows in this current political climate that we could be heading for a political earthquake and the whole political system is in turmoil, that the likes of UKIP and other smaller parties could gain more power and influence in Westminster. But isn't there a great danger that if Britain were to withdraw from the European Union, then the European Union could then put some form of sanctions on Britain and not trade with Britain, and therefore we'd be cut off from our trading partners in Europe?
That presupposes that they will come away, if they sanction this country, Europe that is, would come away unscathed themselves economically, which is complete rubbish. You know, just look at the vehicles on our roads today. Look at any motorway in this country and you will see every European juggernaut possible. And I'm very happy that we are trading with Europe. You don't think for a moment they're going to sanction this country for not being a member of the European Union. As far as the Tory position is concerned, I acknowledge what you say. And actually, I agree with the Tory view up to a degree. We all want to be a nation state, but it's unrealistic. It's not happening. If you look at the European Union and what it actually stands for and will stand for, we are eventually to become one huge United States of Europe. Now, that's fine if you want that. I don't want that.